All right, y'all, welcome to the History of Hemp. Now, let me tell you something. This is my favorite lesson. You're gonna love this because this shows the history of hemp and what happened and why it got regulated and taken off the market and the politics behind it. But this is fascinating, so check this out. And by the way, this is gonna make you sound real smart when you're with your friends. So here's the history of hemp. Now, hemp was used consistently throughout our culture back before the pre-colonial era all the way to World War II. So just so you know, the pre-colonial area was 1492 to 1800. So before the pre-colonial area, so this is way, way back. I mean, they've been using hemp for 5,000 years. I mean, they used it to build the pyramids, right? But we were using it in the United States up until 1945, which was World War II. So what was happening, especially during war times, is that farmers in the US were actually required for a part or a percentage of their crops to grow hemp because we needed it. We needed it to make sails for our ships, to make rope, to make concrete, and to make paper. So back before paper was made with trees, it was made with hemp. So you think about the Declaration of Independence that was written in 250 years ago, and you can still see it today when you go to the Smithsonian because it's written on hemp. Hemp paper lasts forever, whereas regular paper made from wood does not. So here's what's interesting, right? So we used hemp all throughout early times in the US. It was a common product. As a matter of fact, when George Washington left the White House, he said to his wife, Martha, he said, "I can't wait to get back to Mount Vernon and tend to our hemp crop." So everybody was growing it. It's just part of what we did because it was a useful crop. Okay, so here's what happened. Now this is the political move. Georgia-Pacific, which is the #1 paper producer in the US, maybe in the world for all I know, but they had an idea and they figured out that paper was cheaper to make from trees, and there was an abundance of trees and they could make it cheaper than doing it with hemp. So, obviously marijuana was out there and they didn't know the difference between the hemp plant and the marijuana plant, but what Georgia-Pacific did is something, deceitful. They put out an anti-marijuana, anti-hemp campaign, and it was called, they did a movie called Reefer Madness. Now, if you haven't seen this movie, you've got to go watch it. I didn't see it till about probably 2 months ago. I had heard about it. And if you just go on YouTube and you search Reefer Madness, you'll see, I think 1936 is when it came out. That's right, 1936. And you'll see a black and white 36. Then you'll also see the color ones. I watched the black and white. I wanted to get a feel for what it was like. It was fascinating. And what it shows is these kids who were exposed to marijuana were basically ruining their lives. They're jumping out of windows. They're going to prison, all because they smoked marijuana. And they're creating this vibe around the country that marijuana is bad. And of course, then they clump hemp in there with it because what they want to do is take hemp off the market so Georgia-Pacific could make paper. So they did this whole anti-marijuana campaign, cannabis, hemp, the whole deal. They were doing shows in the street talking about, kids going crazy on marijuana, seriously. And so what happened was this movie came out in 1936, and in 1937 there was a Marijuana Tax Act that was passed, which made massive taxes on growing anything that was resembling marijuana, including hemp. And by the way, when World War II was going on, the government said that, hey, after all this transpired here, the Tax Act, they said after the war, which was in 1945, it ended. They said, we are going to be transferring out of hemp. You cannot grow any more hemp because it's now, basically illegal. And so the farmers, they said, we still expect you to make it now for the war, but after you got to start moving it out. So the farmers really didn't care much about it because they just started planting, soybeans or corn or, everything else that you could grow. So they just kind of moved it out of their inventory, if you will. So what happened was, after World War II, there was no more hemp on the market. And what happened was, because of technology, we created things like polyester and plastic. So we didn't need hemp anymore for clothes and we were making plastics, and we didn't need all that stuff. So, you know, hemp was used, like I said, years ago. It was has properties in it that are constructive, like it's even put in cement and whatnot. Like I said, they made it back in the Egyptian pyramids 5,000 years ago. Hemp was part of the process that they made the pyramids. So after World War II, no more hemp. Now, in 1970, it started making a comeback. Now, obviously, it's before our time, but in 1972, what happened is Nixon signed the Drug Enforcement Act in 1972, and literally how the story goes, they were up there signing the bill, and one of the legislators came up there and said, "Hey, you left hemp off the list." And they go, oh yeah," because we all know that hemp and marijuana are cousins, if you will, but it's not the same plant. But they threw it in there because of the past with the paper and how valuable it was, and it's a political move. But what happened was, then it's gone again, and in 1972, after it was signed, scientists started really researching the hemp plant all the way up to 1914, and what they found was, from 72 to 2014, all these researchers were researching the hemp plant. What they found, there was 111 different molecules that showed promise inside the hemp plant, and they started studying these things, right? So that's valuable. Now, what happened in 2014, Obama signed the Farm Act, which basically, for lack of a better word, took out the federal regulations or restrictions on hemp. Now it's still regulated by the state, but there's no more federal regulations. So the history of hemp, this was a crop that was used all the way through our culture, all the way up to World War II, and it was common. And then it was taken out by a political, disingenuous type of claim, taken off the market so Georgia Pacific could make paper. They grabbed the paper market, they buried hemp. Hemp goes away for a long time, it starts to come back. Nixon crushes it with the Drug Enforcement Act of 1972. It goes back underground. Scientists are studying it. They find 111 different molecules that show promise. They start studying it, of course, and then in 2014, Obama signed the Farm Act, and that's when things started blowing up, because all of a sudden you can grow hemp and it's not a big deal. And so CBD becomes popular, and here's where we are today, where it's just starting to get its legs in an industry that's going to grow tremendously. So this is your history of hemp. Tremendous, very, very a unique story, and something that you can tell your clients and your friends to talk about why the hemp plant and the marijuana plant are classified the way they are. Great job.